Hello, good evening, and welcome back. We have a story from Mallorca of COVID. So, man arrested after infecting 22 people in Mallorca. The sentencing is yet to happen. Let's cut to the chase and just lead to the finishing article, which is to say that none of the people became seriously ill, police said. Right, I mean, that's hardly surprised given that it is COVID, and let's not fuck about. The main comorbidity, it's not quite a comorbidity, but the main risk factor, there we go, for COVID is obesity or being overweight. So essentially, if you're healthy, then COVID ain't going to be a bloody problem. And that is according to the World Health Organization, the CDC, ONS, whoever you wish to use as your source in order to say what is not acceptable to state, then yes, any of these reputable trust in the science outlets will assure you that being overweight is one of, if not the biggest, risk factor, proportionally speaking. And it definitely is, proportionally speaking, as in what has made it a global pandemic where it needn't have been otherwise. Obesity! Yeah! So, with that in mind, that it isn't really a problem for people who take personal responsibility for their own health, let's look into what the issue is in Mallorca. So, a man has been arrested in Spain on suspicion of assault, after allegedly infecting 22 people with COVID. The 40-year-old is alleged to have continued to go to work and the gym, despite having a cough and a temperature of more than 40 degrees C, which is 104 degrees Fahrenheit. So, if this is a gent who's going to the gym, and is maybe infecting other people at the gym, is this going to be a chap who's out of shape? Most likely not. Is he going to be infecting other people who are out of shape and therefore at risk? Most likely not. And if people take their own personal precautions, is he going to be infecting anybody who is afraid of the virus? No. So yeah, it's almost Occam's razor in order to say, if you're afraid of the virus, then don't fucking go out. And also, if you're in one of those risk groups, then don't fucking go out. And if you're in a gym exercising, then it is highly likely that you're not in one of those bloody risk groups, unless you wish to be the one with a bloody gas mask doing the oxygen deprivation as if you're running up the Himalayas in order to try and accentuate your VO2 max or whatever it is, because you are clearly an elite athlete and not just slightly kinky. So he is said to have walked around his place of work in Mallorca, pulling his mask down, coughing, and telling colleagues he was going to infect them. Now, even for me, that does seem a bit much. It's like, I'm going to infect you. As hilarious as it might be, it does seem as if he was trying to provoke some sort of a reaction. And therefore this isn't advised. Obviously, there's not really much I can say on this and still be allowed on YouTube or be applicable in British law. But I think it is safe to say that if you don't show symptoms and you don't seem to be ill, and of course that you don't show that illness to other people, then there would be no reason to suspect that you are ill, because you're probably not ill. So who would know if you show yourself as healthy? Nobody would know. Nobody would suspect that you might have the coof. I'm going to leave it at that. So 5 colleagues and 3 fellow gym goers later tested positive. Another 14 people, family members of the infected, also came down with the coof, including 3 one-year-olds. Which is nice. Of course, they're trying to say, it's 1-year-olds, and therefore they're going to be very susceptible to an illness. But of course, we know that when it comes to the coof, 1-year-olds aren't susceptible to the illness. So, if you know what you're talking about, when they say that there are some very young children who were infected, then you can breathe a sigh of relief and go, that's good. That is 3 fewer people who could be seriously affected. Obviously, we've already skipped to the bottom. But the point is this. The point is that somebody was arrested for having the coof and still needing to go to work. Now, I'm sure that the rest of us are the same, not that we'd willingly admit it. So let's put it this way, that if we were to think that we might have the coof, most likely we would not wish to have that 2 weeks off work for what, £500? For 2 weeks off work? It's like, yeah, personally I'd much rather be working overtime and be earning more than £500 for 2 weeks, because I'd rather be on more than £1,000 a month, personally, as in I'd rather break even when it comes to reaching the bottom tax bracket, so that isn't really helping. And kind of, given living expenses, some would argue that I kind of need to, and to be on track with my savings as well. So yeah, I'd much rather not have the test in the first place in order to continue to be able to work. And some would say, well, hey, that is a little bit disrespectful and unthoughtful of other people, because you might be putting them at risk. In which case, the easiest response is, if you are scared, then don't go outside, but don't force other people to conform to your will. The issue here, though, is of course with the idea of having those symptoms, having the test and not waiting for the result, because he actually volunteered for it, it seems, or at least he went along with having the test, and then allegedly stating that he would willingly infect other people. Now, of course, we know that when it comes to the Mediterranean legal system, it is not as cut and dry or as reputable as the British legal system, and we do all, of course, understand that, especially when it comes to Greece and taxes, for example. They have a different way of doing things, which isn't so based on the honour system as it is over here. But nonetheless, the point still stands. If there is an illness and you wish to go outside, should there be a prisonable offence? And before you say yay or nay, do bear in mind, what if it is the bubonic plague, or the pneumonic plague rather, even worse? Something which is incredibly infective and kills 2/3 of people. Or if it's like MERS, for example, instead of SARS. Something with a significantly higher death rate. At that point, does that person have a social responsibility in order to keep themselves at home? Is there ever a cutoff to say that they should stay home? Or, instead, do you think that the rest of us have a responsibility to acknowledge that at any point whatsoever we could encounter somebody who might have an illness that could kill us? And is that just part and parcel of living in a free, open and democratic society? At what point do you think it's safe to say, no, this person should stay inside so that they do not infect other people? Personally, I'm all for freedom of information, of course, and freedom of the individuals, in order to admit that, yeah, there is, of course, always a risk that you will encounter somebody who has such an illness or disease, and this is down to that freedom of information in order to explain who has such diseases, when, where, and how. And therefore, they should still be allowed outside, and it's down to you if you wish to interact with them, given that information. If you do not do your research, then that is down to you. And I do understand that that can spread through populations very quickly, and of course that is therefore a problem. But again, if you're self-reliant, it is not going to be your problem. Come down to the supply chains, still not going to be a problem if you're self-reliant. But let me know what you guys think. Like, ideally, you guys will have a cutoff point of to say, okay, well, if the infection rate is above 80% and the fatality rate is above 30% amongst healthy people with no pre-existing conditions, then that is where the cutoff is. Or it might be 70% and 10%. Whatever it might be, I am intrigued to know what you guys have to say. If you have a firm cutoff point in order to say, yeah, at that point, people should stay home and should not be allowed outside, because it is as if they are sharing a biological weapon. But when you do mention those points, bear in mind that it is that same argument that is being used in order to force people to self-quarantine. So at what point are you going to abandon libertarian values in order to protect the many at the cost of the few? Difficult question, but you didn't come to this channel for it to be easy. So let me know what you guys think down below. Especially intrigued to what you guys have to say about this one. If you have a particular quantitative figure in order to mention, or if you have a better way of viewing it than me, please do let me know down below. We're all here to learn from each other. And of course, as always, until next time, have a good one.